The Yotobike Leopard Mid-Drive Edition is an extra fat tire, high torque, hill climbing machine. This monster truck of an e-bike literally has the word truck in the name of its motor, which features a torque sensor and claims to produce up to 200 Newton meters of torque. Today we'll go over the specs and components of this bike, as well as take it through our usual on and off-road tests.
Yeah, all these bumps are a joke. Oh my god, this is insane. This is an off-road this is just a monster truck. There's nothing else I can call it.
Let's jump right in.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today we are on a monster truck of an e-bike, and it's actually the first mid-drive e-bike of the channel. The Yotobike Leopard mid-drive, featuring the truck run 1000 watt rated mid-drive motor, 4.8 inch wide tires, ridiculously huge tires. And these tests that we're about to do, the acceleration test, the top speed test, the hill climb testing, it's going to be interesting because mid-drive motors use the gearing of the bike. The gearing of the bike isn't independent from the motor like most hub drive bikes, so we're going to keep it on the biggest sprocket for this 0 to 20 test, and we'll see how it goes. All right, here we go. Throttle only. 3, 2, 1, go. See, it cuts me off at what it says, like 17.2. We're going to have to redo that on the second to largest gear, gear number 2, and maybe that'll bring us to 20. That'll give us an accurate rating. Because not only do you guys want to see the 0 to 20, these chickens over here are the real judges of these tests. All right, here we go. Throttle only. 3, 2, 1, go. A little bit of a slower start. So we'll say that's the 0 to 20, and it looks like the speedometer is mostly accurate. So here's the thing. With mid-drive motors, you have to be careful when you shift because there's a lot of power going through the rear sprocket, and this bike does not have a shift sensor. And what a shift sensor does is it temporarily cuts power when you're shifting to make sure you don't break your gears or break your chain. So I don't know what we're going to do for this test. I'm going to do my best to get up this hill as fast as possible while gingerly shifting through gears. I'll have to let off the power a bit, shift, and then continue on. So we'll see what happens, guys. Maybe we'll do this 2 or 3 times and we'll just take the fastest time. This is going to be throttle only. So these are the challenges that you have to deal with mid-drive motors that you don't have to deal with hub motors, but each one has their pros and cons, so we'll go over that later. All right, we're on gear 1, pedal assist 5, full charge. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, go. See that? See how it snapped? All right, we're in gear 2. Yeah, it's a good thing we switched to gear 2 because we know gear 1 won't even give us 20 miles an hour. I think gear 2 is all we're going to need. Alright, so this test is good. We're good, guys. And we're crossing over pretty much at 20 miles an hour. So now what I want to do is check the free spinning wheel RPM. And what we're going to have to do is switch it to the smallest sprocket and see what that is. Remember, guys, low power so we don't break anything. Alright. So we're in the smallest sprocket, and we did unlock this bike, ladies and gentlemen. So it looks like this will top out at about 38 miles an hour at the wheel. It's pretty good. Now, by the way, this isn't a bike that you get for speed. Look at this thing. 5-inch wide tires, or almost 5-inch wide tires. That's crazy. You're not going to be worried about top speed with a bike like this, but we're going to check the downhill speed right now. We'll get up to speed pedaling and see how close we can get it to that 38 mile an hour top speed. All right, throttle. We're tucked down. Yeah, look at this, guys. We're holding 36, 37 down that hill. That's fantastic. Yeah, hear that snapping? You have to be really careful when you're switching gears. I got to get a gear shift sensor on this bike. I think I'm going to install one later. I already did a few little modifications to this bike, which we're going to talk about later on. But ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna head over to our steep hill climb test. Oh my god. Going over, dropping down that curb and going up the other curb was nothing. These tires and the suspension, this is truly the monster truck of e-bikes. Handlebar test, not too wide actually. Not bad. Yeah, this thing has some serious low-end grunt. A lot of torque in that low-end range. Yeah, dropping down that feels fine. The suspension in the back is very, very, very nice. And even though I couldn't find any adjustments for the front fork, it still feels pretty good. Switch it to gear 1, and then let's go ahead and set it to pedal assist 5, and let's see how it does. Throttle only. Up our steep hill climb test. Starting at the line, as always, 3, 2, 1, go. Something tells me it's just gonna cruise right up. Yeah. This is the advantage of a mid-drive. It just cruises right on up. Easy peasy. The motor, believe it or not, it's not really struggling all that much. And if I ever did want to add more low-end torque, I can easily just switch the sprocket to have a larger rear granny gear. And that way you can get even more low-end torque, even more hill climbing than what this bike already offers. Give you guys a quick 20-mile-an-hour brake test, and brake. Alright, the brakes work very well. They are on the louder side. The pads do need to be bedded in still. I don't know if the brakes are going to get a little bit quieter after I do that, or if I need a new pad material. But they do work well, and if you're going to be doing heavy off-roading, going downhill, doing God knows what, you need some good stopping power. And these are giant rotors. I think they're 203 millimeter. Man, they are loud. I think they're 203 millimeter rotors. And these are single piston calipers, but they look like they're like extra diesel. They're huge. All I know is that the brakes work well. I feel like every time I'm doing a video on an e-bike, there's always trash cans out. I'm sorry, guys. I wish my town was a little bit more scenic. Fortunately, it's not, and apparently it is eternally trash day. I was recording a video just the other day. Trash day. Apparently in this neighborhood, trash day. Alright, so we're gonna do our top speed test now. And what I'm gonna do is bring it all the way to the highest gear, the 8th gear. We're gonna pedal for a bit, get up to speed, and see what kind of speed we top out at. I'm hoping this thing gets at least 30 miles an hour. And for a huge bike like this, I think that's fine. Alright, pedaling. I feel that suspension moving a lot. Alright, we're dipping down. I'm still pedaling. I want to get at least up to 30 and see where this thing brings us. Alright, throttle only. 31. I did unlock this bike in the settings, but there's only so much you can do with 48 volts. 31 miles an hour or holding strong. That's pretty good, guys. I'll take it. Alright, so this is about a 30 to 31 mile an hour e-bike. And just for your reference, I am 195 pounds, and I have a large backpack on me full of filming gear that weighs about 20 pounds. So we're going to go ahead and do 2 off-road sections, because you're not going to buy a bike like this and not off-road it. We're going to do 2 off-road sections. Our first main one along the side of the road, and then we're going to go over to that steep, grassy hill climb area and see how this mid-drive does. So, let's continue on. See, like right now, you gotta very gingerly shift down, and then you can power through. I feel like the throttle gives you full power no matter what. So what you have to do is just turn your legs a little bit, and then you can shift, and then you can power. So it is what it is, guys. Just something you have to deal with a mid-drive e-bike. Rolling over that grass, I pretty much forgot I was even on grass. With the tires and the suspension, this just eats up every bump that you could throw at it. It's insane. And of course, the larger wheels helps roll over obstacles a lot better than smaller 20 by 4 inch size wheels. I did put flat out in the back tire, by the way, about 16 ounces. Yeah, this is nothing. This is ridiculous. I'm just throttling, by the way. I'm just cruising. So we're on gear 1 right now. We'll just throttle. Tires are absolutely eating everything up. Bushes. Oh, God. Might not be able to do this off-road test for much longer if those keep growing in. Yeah, all these bumps are a joke. Oh, my God. This is insane. This is an off-road... this is just a monster truck. There's nothing else I can call it. Straight up monster truck. Let's go back. Let's do that again. Lots of low-end torque. Good acceleration. That's one good thing about mid-drive motors is that you can really change how much torque this thing will give you just by changing your gearing. As long as you have a derailleur that it can accommodate whatever kind of rear freewheel or cassette you have in the back. And this does have a cassette in the back, which is a little bit different than a freewheel. Freewheels, I think, thread on, and they're just not as advanced as cassettes, I think. But this has some nice high-end parts on it. It does have that 8-speed cassette in the back. And again, this is just gear 1. We're throttling right now. Just eating everything up. And if I want to shift, I just turn my legs a little bit and then shift down into a higher gear. And we're good. If you're very, very, very serious about off-roading, a lot of people recommend mid-drives, and I could see why. Insane torque, and this bike in particular, with the tires and the suspension, this thing is an animal. The tires are obviously on the louder side because they are massive 4.8-inch wide knobby tires, and so don't expect a quiet ride with this bike. However, once again, if you're going to be getting a bike like this, you're probably not going to be keeping it on the road for very long. And I wouldn't recommend it, because why would you get a bike like this with 5-inch wide tires, or almost 5-inch wide tires, and then ride it on the pavement? Makes no sense. Unless you want to be the e-bike equivalent of a lifted truck that they call a mall crawler. Keeps it pristine and clean, mud-free, but has $10,000 worth of off-road upgrades on it. Hey, if you want to do that, God bless you. It's a free country. I'm just saying, this thing is most comfortable off-road. And that's where we're going next. We're going to go to our big grassy field area and see how it does on the hill. I don't think it's going to make it up the grassy hill, I got to be honest. Even with this mid-drive configuration, I think we're going to need a larger granny gear. In theory, the biggest granny gear that you could really get is something where the bike pretty much it'll struggle staying upright. So maybe like it'll max out at 5 miles an hour or so. That's a little bit on the excessive side, but if you have that, you will truly go up anything. I do want to potentially keep this bike, mess around with it a little bit more, and see what different gearing configurations give me. I want to really get to know this motor, this truck run 1000 watt rated motor, what it can handle. And as you guys can tell, oh, you got to be really careful with shifting. So make sure you're pedaling, giving it only a little bit of power, just enough to shift, and then you can throttle. And as you guys can tell, we are on the sidewalk, and I don't feel bad about that at all, because this does have normal bicycle geometry. It looks pretty much like a normal bike minus the insanely huge tires, but at least it doesn't look like a motorcycle. Something else I would probably recommend if you do have a mid-drive bike, if you do ride it a lot, is have a chain repair kit on you when you are riding a bike like this, because the likelihood you'll break your chain with a high-powered motor like this is a lot higher than with a lower power mid-drive. With a hub drive, you're not going to break your chain really, unless you have like some kind of Olympian level leg strength. You can rip your chain, or you have a bad chain to begin with. But with this kind of power running through the chain, very common that that chain will break, so definitely carry a chain repair kit with you. And by the way, guess what I don't have? A chain repair kit. Because I'm so used to hub drives. I do have a repair kit in my bag for flats and whatever, but nothing to fix chains. So keep that in mind if you're going to get a high-powered mid-drive bike. Cross it on over. Switch it to lowest gear. And look at us, just torquing our way through this environment. Easy. That's the benefit of the mid-drive motor, guys, is that it just gives you insane low-end torque. From 0 to 5 miles an hour, mid-drive like e-bikes are king. All right, so we're gonna give this hill a rolling start. We'll see how it does. I don't think it's gonna make it. We'll try it. See, it's trying, but it still bogs down. This is just such a steep hill. I do have one bike that did make it up this hill, throttle only. We're going to go through that in future videos. But for now, let's talk about this bike. We're going to head on down and we'll go over some of the specs and components of this bike. All right, guys, we're going to check out the specs and components of the Yotobike Leopard mid-drive model. There is a hub drive version. This is the mid-drive version. It has a 1,000 watt nominal rated truck run mid-drive motor right over here, which has its pros and cons up on the screen. I'll let you guys know how many amps the controller is pulling. This is a 48 volt system. And so 48 times that amount of amps will give you the max output in watts of this mid-drive motor. I'm gonna put that up on the screen right now. But before we go into anything else, I'm sure you guys are thinking, what is going on with this rear fender right here? So I got the fender kit with this bike, obviously the rear and the front fender. And if you notice, the front fender also has a lot of clearance from the wheel to the fender itself. And there's two reasons why. Number one, the mount for the front fender is right there, so not much I can do. And number two, there is actually a whole lot of suspension travel in these suspension forks. These things are, from what I could gather, non-adjustable. There's no adjustments up here or there, and I didn't find any adjustments underneath, so I don't think these suspension forks are adjustable, but they have a ton of travel. And so this clearance is greatly appreciated. Not only is there a ton of travel in the front, there is a whole lot of travel in the back, and that's why I put this thing all the way up. If that fender were any lower to the wheel, it would 100% hit the wheel. So that's why it looks a little bit ridiculous, I know. You can always take these fenders off if you want, but I think it looks all right. Maybe I'll take them off later on. I know a lot of you mountain bikers just do without the fenders and decide to get dirty, but here we are. I guess I'm choosing to be a princess. When I did originally mount this rear fender, it was on the floppier side. And so some zip tie magic underneath definitely helped reduce the flop. It does still flop around a little bit, but it is very secure underneath the seat. Front fender also does flop around a little bit, but there is so much clearance between the wheel and the fender, you really don't have to worry about it. This is a D&M, looks like P-Shocks A06. This thing has a ton of travel. It looks very, very sturdy. Lots of big, beefy components. This is, of course, an air shock, so you can adjust how much air is in there. Medium-sized front chainring, and this is going to determine the dynamics of torque and top speed of the rear sprocket. We'll talk about all of that in a second. This bike does come in this military-looking green color, which I think looks pretty cool, which I think is very fitting of the bike's performance and aggressive features. Inside the frame is a 20 amp hour 48 volt battery. The seat is decently squishy and fairly wide. And believe it or not, I actually cut off a portion of the seat post because the seat post was actually long enough to be stopped at this point of the frame. So it was up another 2 3/4, maybe 2.5 inches from what you guys see right now. And that was a little bit too high for me. I know if I am gonna be pedaling hard, yeah, you want the seat to be higher, and I can do that. But for my 5'10" frame, this is perfect for just kind of chill, cruising around, review riding. Something else I want to point out is that this bike does come with this battery-operated rear light, which typically is mounted horizontally. But because of the way the fenders mount and because of how high the fender has to be from the wheel, you wouldn't be able to see this light if it was back here. And so I kind of did a little bit of zip tie trickery underneath. And so at least you get the safety of the rear light there. And I think it looks okay. It doesn't look out of place and you still have that rear light. The brakes on this bike are amazing. They have these huge calipers back here and it doesn't look like they're quad piston, but they are very good brakes. And these are very thick 203 millimeter rotors. So
You get plenty of stopping power with this e-bike. And you get the same thing in the front as well. And this front wheel is bolted on with a through axle. Tires on this bike are CST roly-poly 26 by 4.8 inch tires. These tires are monstrous. They are huge tires. They are, of course, on the louder side when you're going to be rolling around on the roads, but you're probably not going to want to do that if you get a bike like this. This does come with a Shimano HG Mega Range 34 tooth, which means 34 teeth up here. And I think this one down here is 11. And so that will play a big role in how much torque your bike has and how much top speed your bike has. I topped this bike out at just about 31 miles an hour. And honestly, I would sacrifice some top speed for a larger granny gear back here. In theory, I could see if I can find some kind of a cassette with an even larger granny gear back here and maybe keep the same 11 tooth sprocket down here. Or I could change that front chainring to something smaller if I want this whole cassette to be higher torque but lower speed. Obviously, if I made that bigger, this would be an even higher speed cassette, but I think at that point the motor wouldn't really have power to get me all that much further past 31 miles an hour. So I'd rather take more climbing ability than top speed. I'm happy if this bike tops out at like 25. I'm not gonna really be taking this thing on the streets at all. It's just gonna be an off-roading machine. We also get a Shimano Acera derailleur, no derailleur guard. This down here is gonna be the speed sensor of the wheel. So as this magnet passes this sensor, it tells the display how fast the bike is going. Charge port right over there. And of course you can charge the battery on the bike or off the bike. The brakes have these cool oil reservoirs, which I've never seen before on an e-bike. I've seen these on motorcycles before, but never on an e-bike. And so that does look kind of cool. And underneath, we've got an 8-speed trigger shifter. Nice feeling, stitched. I don't know if these are faux leather grips. They do unfortunately turn a little bit. And so what I would do if I were you, if I got this bike, I'd probably switch this to a locking grip, especially if you're gonna be taking this off-roading, you're gonna be riding it aggressively. You want something very stable and secure for handlebar grips. Thumb throttle on the left, which is typically fine. One small detail that you want to watch out for is sometimes when you're using this thumb throttle, I accidentally hit the minus button right here. And I'm thinking, why did I lose power? And that's because I switched it by accident to pedal assist 0. So maybe you can turn this up a little bit, turn this down to get some more space between the minus button and the thumb throttle right here. Very simple control panel right here, but this display has a lot of settings. We're gonna go through all of those in a second. Guys, let's go ahead and take a look at the advanced settings of the display. So when you turn the bike on, you get a nice truck run logo. Look at that. So I already adjusted a couple things here. If you notice up top here, it shows you voltage, which is excellent. Under that, it shows you your wattage, so how many watts you're pulling at a given moment. Very good as well. Obviously, you get a speedometer, and although there is a slight delay in the speedometer due to the way it's measured through the wheel, not through the motor, it is an accurate speedometer. It did match up perfectly with the GPS speed, and obviously over here, you've got your pedal assist levels, which you can adjust as well. So to get into the advanced settings, you hold down the plus and minus buttons. And here you can adjust your wheel size. I have it set to 29, and I found that that gave me the most accurate GPS speed. Speed limit, the highest it can go is 37, so we just brought it to 37. You're not gonna get 37 miles an hour out of it anyway, but that's as high as it went. Screen brightness, we just set that all the way up. And here you can change the voltage, so for whatever reason, if you have a 36 volt battery, sure, why not? 48 volt, obviously this is a 48 volt bike. Now here you press the I button again. And I think in this part, what you can do is adjust at what point will there be 1 bars, 2 bars, 3 bars, 4 bars, 5 bars on the battery bar. So for example, if we're at 48 volts, it's gonna give us 5 bars. If we're at 47.5 volts, it's gonna give us 4 bars, etc., and so on and so forth. So that's pretty cool that you can adjust that. We'll set that as is. I didn't change that at all. Advanced settings. So here you can change how many pedal assist levels you have, and I had it set to 0 through 5. I kind of just like 0 through 3 personally, but since this is a torque sensor, you probably want a lot of adjustability. because you're going to be using your leg power a lot. And so I think 0 through 5 is probably good. You can also do 0 through 9 if you want. Always make it so that there is a level 0. What that does is it's for safety. The bike won't launch forwards on you if you accidentally touch the throttle. So at this part, you can change what you see for the battery readout. I have it set to voltage, but you can change it to a percent. We're gonna skip all that. Dormancy, so how long does the bike stay on when you don't use it? Unit, you can switch from kilometers an hour to miles an hour. Obviously we want miles an hour. Password, let's skip that. Factory reset.
So now what we're gonna do is pedal up this hill. Pedal assist 5. And now we got a good amount of power. Still not as much as you might think. Again, if we did get that larger Granny gear in the back, it would be much better. But that was easier than some super high-powered e-bikes that I've had before. 60-volt, 2400-watt e-bikes with the geared hub motor. This still climbed that easier, even though technically it's a lower power motor. So that's why mid-drives are so good for hill climbing. That's really where they truly shine, especially in off-road situations. All right, guys, moving on. So this is throttle only, smallest sprocket. We got lots of torque, guys. We got so much torque. This is probably the most torque that you could ever get out of a 48-volt e-bike. You have to make it mid-drive. Realistically, I'm sure you could get a 48-volt system with a ton of amps, but then you need really big wires for all that current. And so this is the most practical way of getting the most torque out of a 48-volt system. Make it a mid-drive. Crossing on over. Just gonna go right on this curb. Boom. Like it didn't even exist. See, right now I'm pedaling, and I shifted gears. That's the only way to safely shift a mid-drive. Otherwise, you really do run the risk of snapping your chain, or even worse, breaking a gear or bending a gear, and that's of course never fun. We are on the infamous sidewalk in my town, and I almost forgot that we were on it, because the suspension and the tires of this bike just eat everything up. It's crazy. The rear tire is at 25 psi, front tire is at 20 psi. Hello. That, plus the large wheels, plus the suspension, eats everything up. We're just floating right over this. Ridiculous. What else is nice about this bike is I think it has a torque sensor, so I'm pedaling very gently right now, and I'm pretty much getting no power, right? But if I push hard, obviously I get more power. Like right now, I'm pedaling fast, getting no power. But if I actually push in, then I get power. So a mid-drive plus a torque sensor, probably the ideal setup for mountain biking with this kind of e-bike. And it's also the ideal setup for efficiency, getting the most efficiency out of your e-bike's battery, which gives you the most amount of range. And it also gives you a little bit of exercise. Like I'll bring it down to pedal assist to 1. Now I really have to pedal hard to get any kind of help. Bring it up to 5. I'm barely getting any help right now. But if I push hard, that motor winds up and it helps me more. So pretty nice. For those of you guys that love torque sensors, this bike has it. A truck run 1000 watt nominal motor. There we go. We're just going to throttle up this hill. I love how this display also shows you wattage, it shows you your voltage, it shows you your odometer, it shows you your speedometer, it shows you everything you need. Specifically, voltage, speed, and wattage, I guess. And it looks like for wattage, the display is showing us about 1300 watts, which is a whole lot of watts for a mid-drive bike, guys. That's a good amount of power. See, right now we're going fast and I want to shift a little bit. I pedal. Don't use the throttle, then we can throttle. Throttle only, on the, we're not even in the highest gear. Yeah, we can hold about 30 miles an hour with this bike. That's pretty quick for a giant bike like this. Once you get the hang of the shifting, it's not too bad. Just have to make sure that your hand is not on the throttle. Even now, even at a higher pedal assist shifting, you have to be careful to not really put a whole lot of power into your pedals, to not stress that chain and sprocket. Seems like the throttle gives us full power no matter what pedal assist level you're at, and I actually kind of like that. which is good for gear shifting. So to shift the gear, you take your hand off the throttle, gently pedal, you could shift your gears, and then you can continue on throttling. So my final thoughts, guys, after this initial ride on the Yotobike Leopard mid-drive. This thing is an off-road monster. It is the off-road king, it's the emperor, whatever you want to call it. The Galactic Sultan. Giant, almost 5-inch wide tires. They are pretty loud on the road, but that's, that goes with the territory. You get a mid-drive motor that, on the display, peaks at 1,300 watts, over 1,300 watts, which is a lot of wattage for a mid-drive system. 48 volt, 20 amp hour battery. Good amount of battery life. Very good power hydraulic disc brakes. Stops this gigantic monster truck of an e-bike on a dime. Suspension travel is so cushy, so comfy. You can drop off curbs and you don't even know what happened. Going up curbs, effortless. Like it doesn't even exist. And that's partially as a result, obviously, of the large wheels, the large tires, and the suspension. Display is fantastic. Lots of programmability in the display. Shows me everything I need. Wattage, voltage, battery bar, odometer, speedometer. Very nice looking display. The handlebar grips, although they are nice feeling, they do rotate a little bit, so I would probably swap these out if I were you. Simple minimalist control panel, although I do probably want to move this up a tiny bit so I don't keep hitting this minus button right there. Once you modify the seat post, you make it a little bit shorter. I just cut off about 2.5 inches. It does help get the seat nice and low, so if you're a 5'10" height rider like me, or somewhere on there, you probably want to do that. If you are a taller guy, just keep the seat post where it is and you'll be fine. Because after all, this is a torque sensing e-bike, and so you want that extension. You want that leg extension at your knee and your hip to generate power to help the bike power through, because you might as well. You have a torque sensor. So if you guys are looking for a giant monster truck mid-drive e-bike that you can also get some exercise with, this might be a good option. Trigger shifter feels nice, of course. It's out of the way, and trigger shifter I think is the best setup with a thumb throttle, because a trigger shifter with a twist throttle, the twist throttle itself just gets in the way of the paddles for the trigger shifter. So this, I think, is the best setup. The fenders, you don't have to put them on, but if you want to, they're not too bad. The front is totally fine. And if you do a little bit of zip tie magic in the back, it's okay as well. You can always, of course, look for aftermarket fenders if that's what you want. Most of you guys, I'm sure, will probably just not even get the fenders and just have open wheels like a classic mountain bike for an overall cleaner looking aesthetic. Cable management looks great in this bike, routed through the frame. The color looks great. I think the military green color is very fitting for this particular e-bike. Top speed, I know all you guys care about top speed. 31 miles an hour out of a 48 volt bike is fantastic. It is actually very good, especially with something with tires like this, tons of rolling resistance, and it's heavy. So the top speed is actually pretty good for a 48 volt system. Hill climbing is very, very good, especially if you pedal. If you switched out the rear sprocket, you can get some insane hill climbing. You can get hill climbing to the point where the front wheel just wants to lift up, because these back tires, I think, aren't really going to lose traction. They have such a wide footprint, they will hold traction much better than some narrower tires. Seat comfort so far is pretty good, although I know you guys are probably going to switch out the seat anyway. The stock seat is fairly comfortable. Good throttle response. I get power pretty much as soon as I hit the throttle. The brakes are on the louder side, and I think that's a result of the type of pads that are used. I believe these are metallic pads, and so those are going to be on the louder side, but they do stop well. They do stop you well. You guys can always switch those out to some kind of quieter compound if you want. This bike is listed in the description below, along with any coupon codes or discounts that I might be able to offer. If you guys like content like this, feel free to subscribe to the channel. If I've earned your subscription, like the video if you like it. If you don't like it, tell me why in the comments. Tell me why you're mad, and also tell me what you think about this bike, the Yotobike Leopard mid-drive. Is this something you would get? Is this worth the money? Do you like the torque sensor mid-drive setup with the gigantic monster truck sized fat tires? Let me know what you think about this e-bike, guys. I respond to almost all of my comments. Follow me on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and I have 2 Facebook groups, E-Bike Addicts and High Speed E-Bikes, 40 miles an hour and up. That's it for today, folks. Until next time.